Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to read one of my stories that I have created. So I'm going to do a little bit of editing and a little bit of magic, and then I'm going to read you the story. So, without further ado, this story is called Jessica Lives in My Walls. A man fought with his wife about missing food and drinks he bought. His wife would claim not to have anything to do with it. Well, the man eventually got a video camera and recorded the nights of his kitchen and living room while he slept. In the morning, he saw his stuff was missing once again. He looked at what he had captured that night and found a lady was living in his hidden compartment just above them at all times. The couple called the cops and had the girl arrested. This is a true story and had a good ending. But for me, I can't just call the cops. They would take away Jessica in my walls. I've tried Jessica just hides, but lately she has been coming out of the walls and walking around my home. I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. Jessica lives in my walls. Before I go into more detail, I just want to explain one other thing. That is true. That may make you try to believe we are not alone in being top of the food chain. Humans have natural fears such as being afraid of heights, fire, darkness, etc. What about the fear of human-looking objects like mannequins? If you believe our fears come from our ancestors, then can you explain why we would be scared of humanoid things? My conclusion is that the past humans fought or were attacked by unknown human things, which gave us permanent fear of such things. Now, I don't have this fear, but I am afraid of bugs, which will become my greatest weakness. Jessica in my walls. You would probably wonder who is Jessica is. Well, she is a humanoid being that lives in my walls. When I also say my walls, I quite literally mean in my walls. There are many crawl spaces throughout my new home that used to hide away slaves. Now, I won't get into detail on all of the history of my place. Just so you know, my home has many, many spots in its walls to hide and survive. I would like to say Jessica has been doing it for a very, very long time. So, of course, she knows the house much better than me, and I have to give credit where it is due. She is a very sneaky girl, and I rarely catch her. Hell, I can't even count how many times she just inches from me, and I don't know. Well, little did I know the day would come out of all odds. She was on my side, and at least protecting the house. Not quite sure, but I like to think we're good buddies now, and she has stopped taking from me as I have been giving all the stuff she needs. Of course, I know she owns the house more than I do. I just happen to be a welcomed guest because I provide her food and water to her heart's desire. Maybe I should start from the first day I moved into the home, and from there tell you about everything leading up to her killing another humanoid thing. Honestly, the best moments of my life. Just imagine in your life to see two real monsters fight to the death. I get all giggly just thinking about it. Let's start with me. I guess I'm 22-year-old male that works online for a massive company, and I'm very well paid for my work. I choose the days I work and live stream my work to the higher ups for my payment. I'm not sure if anyone else does online work like this, but they do pay big bucks, so I stick with it. A few weeks ago, I decided to move homes as I didn't like the city as much with the outbreak of COVID jacking up all the prices. So I began looking for a new home. I managed to find a cheap, historic home in the country. Knowing this was a bit too perfect, I looked into the home and saw the home had a pretty bad history. And a few weeks ago, the last owner went missing. I gave the person in charge of selling the property a call, and within a day or two, they were giving me a tour of the home. Which, after they showed me most of the rooms, I told them I like to explore for a minute by myself. She nodded, then waited in the kitchen for me. I almost forgot to give the detail about the house. So the house is 2 stories with a basement, many crawl spaces and places to crawl in and hide, as I mentioned before. The house has 1 bathroom and 3 bedrooms. Downstairs is a living room, another bedroom, and a kitchen, a dining room as well. Everything is old and Gothic style. I'm not sure about the home style, but the living room and the kitchen was redone to suit the most modern of people. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about this week. So the real estate lady downstairs in the kitchen was waiting patiently while I explored the house. So I first began to walk up the stairs to what I would presume to be the master bedroom. It had connected to a bathroom with a walk-in closet. I walked around the room thinking where I would put my belongings, in what order they would be, till I heard scratching sounds coming from the closet. I slowly approached the closet thinking an animal had got in, possibly a squirrel or maybe even a raccoon. I opened the door to the darkness before me. I felt the walls for a light switch. Once I found it, I flipped it on and saw it had old wood shelves, hangers to my right, as well a old Chester drawer to my left. Other than that, there was nothing in the closet, so I chucked it up to the noise of the house settling, or maybe rats, because at the time I was skeptic of the supernatural. Obviously, normal people wouldn't believe in such a thing. So, I can for sure say I'm a believer now, of course, knowing Jessica. After I turned around and turned off all the lights, I was about to close the door when the noise started up again. I opened the door again and saw nothing, but in the darkness gave me a unnatural feeling, like my brain knew there was something just next to me in the darkness, like a raw primal urge deep inside telling me just to run for my life. Yet all I could do is stare into the darkness as my brain tried to wrap around to figure out what I was looking at. In the darkness, as many shapes shifted into the dark, molding into unrecognizable things. The real estate lady grabbed my shoulder and scared the living shit out of me. I thought she was the killer of some horror movie. I jumped back into the door of the closet, almost taking it off the hinges. She profusely apologized, but I told her it was fine and I would take the house. After a good amount of paperwork was done and a large amount of my savings gone, I owned the home, and it was time to move in. I hired a moving company, and within a day, all my stuff was in the living room, except for the furniture, of course, such as my bed, couches, and tables, etc. Those things was in the proper place first, and then came the extremely boring unpacking of all my stuff. I got into 3 boxes, took a break, and then had nothing else done that day. Don't judge me. It is mentally hard not to procrastinate on such a boring task. While on my break, I was watching some TV till I heard something fall upstairs. I thought someone threw something onto the ground. I signed thinking it was the lazy, poorly stacked stuff that the movers did. Once I got there, I confirmed my suspicions. In one of the extra rooms, I saw a tower of boxes had fallen over. One of the boxes that fell had scattered across the floor, with all its objects scattered across the floor. I signed and fixed the remaining boxes and left the room. Honestly, I didn't feel like picking up the stuff that had fallen. As I was leaving, I stopped and I heard something. I slowly turned to see the closet door was ajar. I slowly approached it and opened the door. I felt for the light switch and around the walls again. But this time I yanked my hand back after I felt something move with under my hand. It felt warm, firm, and creeped me out for sure. I manned up and began to reach in again, feeling for the light switch when my doorbell went off. I paused and tried to think of who would be ringing my door. It went off multiple more times and I yelled, "I'm coming!" As I left the room, I closed the door behind me. I went to the front door, peeked through the peek hole, and saw a girl, possibly 19, with a nice white and yellow polka-dotted dress, brown short hair, and blue eyes with a warm smile to show all over, white teeth. I opened the door and looked at her up and down. I figured she was about to sell me cookies or tell me about the Lord and Savior. I was wrong on both accounts. Instead, she said with a grinning smile, "My mother told me we should welcome you to our neighborhood. We are just a small town after all, so why not be friendly and give you a warm greeting?" It was fake after all. She said, sounded like she would memorized it, and it was through the steps of her mind that she was going through. Me being me, I felt for her parents, made her do some shit all the time she didn't want to do. I looked at her and said, "Care to come in? I'm not a killer or anything, but you don't want to be here or do this. I do have cold beer in my freezer if you want one." This is when I saw a sparkle in her eyes, but it dimmed out quickly after, as she said, "Sorry, but I'm not allowed to. I'm only 18. Plus, I should be get going unless the cops will kick down your door thinking you kidnapped me." I laughed and commented, "Wait, your parents called the cops on you? And they did that? What, were you having a sleepover or something?" I shouldn't be too surprised. I mean, I didn't ever get fed, so I was on a diet of canned food and had to learn real fast that she likes to have men over to fill all her endless pits. Hell, one time I walked in with a guy plowing her face as she turned red and blue. The girl chuckled and smiled with a spark in her eye and said, "Well, maybe sometime we can talk about how bad our parents are after all. I should be going now, though. I don't want the wrath of my Karen brought down upon you like the biblical times." I nodded and smiled while I said, "Sounds good. I'll be here." She gave a warming smile before walking off into the woods. I didn't think too much of it, as I figured at the time she must have lived on the other side of the woods. I closed my door and sat on the couch again, watching TV till it was time to sleep. I got up and went to bed and passed out pretty quickly, as I was pretty tired from all the moving. But in the middle of the night, I would wake up to a sudden sound and look at my closet to see a figure was just standing there in the open door. I assumed Jessica didn't notice this because I began to stare back. I quickly went for the light in the near door, and the figure pinned me against the wall. Due to the dark, I couldn't see what she looked like exactly, but what I did see was a humanoid creature before me. I imagined the human body. Now, the arms and legs are twice as long, the knees bent backwards, and then give it a tail. And that what was holding me against the wall, next to the door of my room. I tried to fight back, but Jessica was extremely strong. And I'm not normally a pushover, but she was super strong. I just figured this was it, staring up at the two bright blue eyes as it stared back at me. Unlike any human eyes, Jessica's eyes shifted in on itself like a hypnotoad from Futurama. Slow motion battle of waves colliding into one another. Before I knew it, I woke up on the floor. I quickly looked around, thinking that the intruder was still there with me. Luckily, it was not, and the coast was clear. I got off the ground and right away had a headache. I groaned in pain as I went out of my room. It honestly felt like I was hit in the head by a baseball bat. I stumbled down the hallway into the bathroom. I looked into the mirror and saw a massive knot on my forehead. I tried to remember what happened last night and believed I had a weird dream and sleepwalked until I hit my head on the ground after tripping. I was wrong, of course, but at the time I didn't believe in the supernatural, so I was trying to tell myself what happened. I went to the kitchen, got a bag of ice, and put a hand towel around it before putting it on my head to make all the swelling go down. I then went into the living room and saw some boxes were open and things were set to the side. I think that I gone through them in organized piles of stuff. I then saw a bottle of painkillers was out on the living room table. Without questioning it, I grabbed two of them from the bottle and went back to the kitchen to get something to drink. I opened the fridge to see all my sodas was missing, yet my beers was still there. I signed and got a glass of water instead. At some point, I figured I sleepwalked a lot and did a lot of unpacking within my sleep, yet I didn't have any clue what happened to my soda. On cue, my stomach growled at me, and I let out a hateful groan, as I knew my food was still in boxes. So I grabbed my keys and put on my Crocs, and was about to go get me some fast food from a restaurant. I opened my front door to see the girl from yesterday back, coming onto my porch in the same dress as yesterday, but this time I noticed her dress was slightly dirty. Like she had wore it all day yesterday and today. She smiled at me, and I shared one back. Still holding the ice on my head, she curiously looked at what I was doing to my head and said, "What's wrong with your head?" I waved her off and replied with a smile still on my face. Turns out, sleepwalking and nightmares are not a good mix. I must have fell and hit my head on the floor while sleepwalking. She chuckled at my story and seemed concerned as she said, "I would think so. Are you going to the hospital? Is it that bad?" I shook my head no as I let my smile fade a bit as I said, "Oh no, I'm just getting myself something to eat. I haven't had anything yet, and my food is still in boxes." She nodded and took a final step on my porch and grew a smile as she said, "How about I unpack and maybe see what kind of breakfast I can make you?" I thought about the offer would be amazing. But then I recalled yesterday how confronting her mom is. So I said, "That would be nice, but what about your mom? I think I can't fight Karen's wrath with my injury. Her smile faded for a brief moment as she tried to think about what to say. At this moment, I began to get a good look at her, with the bright sun shining down on her. And honestly, for a second, I thought it would be nice to have her as my girlfriend. A very odd feeling, or thought rather, but it is what I thought at the time. I realized I was falling for the girl I met yesterday, but something told me I had unknowingly known her more and more the more I think about it. Oddly enough, she just introduced herself yesterday, but yet I still feel that I know her so much more. I was snapped out of my thoughts by her saying, "Well, she's at work and won't be home for a while, so I could probably help you for a bit till I need to go, if you don't mind me helping you, of course." I rubbed my chin and thought for a moment before opening the door behind me and walking in, letting her in as well. I sat on the couch and pulled a box to me and went through it as she walked over to the tower of boxes next to me, were the ones that had been unpacked last night while I sleepwalked. In less than a minute, she said, "Here we are. I found a canned food." This is when I got up and went to my car. As I remembered, I put all the produce in the back seat in a large cooler. The food had been fine as it was fall, so the food wouldn't get too hot in my car. Honestly, I forgot about it. This is when the girl came outside and saw me struggling to get my cooler out of my car. She came over to help and picked it up and pulled it out with ease and carried it with 2 hands inside. I was impressed as it was pretty heavy. So when she got the cooler inside, I said, "Damn, Superwoman, how has life been treating you on Earth so far?" She had a bit of a concerned look on her face, seeing I was joking, which she then returned a remark. "Well, maybe if you worked out your muscles a bit, you would be just like me and able to pick up a cooler filled with food." I laughed as I sat back on the couch, going through stuff out of the boxes and dragged them over to me. I heard her moving stuff around in the kitchen before heading upstairs and returning with a pan. This drew a red flag for me, and I asked, "How did you know my pans was upstairs?" She looked at me with a smile while holding a non-stick pan in her hand as she came down the stairs. Once at the bottom, she said, "You told me. Are you sure you don't need to go to the doctor?" I sighed and rubbed my head, trying to think if I did or didn't tell her where my pans was, which I gave in and believed I did tell her, which now I know I didn't at all and should have threw up more red flags. Yet my head energy didn't seem to see the truth for what it is. She went back to the kitchen after seeing I believed her, and then would start making eggs and ham. Honestly, it smelled amazing, and I began to hear my stomach beg and more for food. I got up and started walking over towards the kitchen. This is when she came out of the kitchen with 2 plates full of eggs and ham. This should have thrown another red flag, as there was no plates put up either. Yet I was still oblivious to the fact. I followed her back to the couch, where she gave me a plate with a fork, and I devoured the plate right away, and I looked at her blankly as she stared at me. I got a bit confused and said, "You good?" She snapped out of her long gaze and began to eat her food. I set the plate on the living room table and leaned back on the couch. We sat on the couch and grabbed the remote, turned on the TV as she ate very slowly, like she wasn't trying to eat anything at all or something. I tried not to pay too much attention to it as I got comfortable on the couch, and before I knew it, I was out like someone had turned the light switch upstairs. I woke up hours later and with one of my covers from my bed on me. I slowly lifted and looked around to see it was night already. I signed and rubbed my head as I scanned the room and noticed all the boxes around me were not there anymore. I slowly got up and turned on the living room light and looked around at the fully furnished living room. I turned and looked at the kitchen to see the same situation with all the boxes empty and everything in the correct place. I was amazed at the girl as she had done all this while I was sleeping. I was about to call her name, but then I realized I didn't know her name. She was in my house while I was asleep, and I didn't even know her name. And she didn't know mine either. I began to go upstairs and looked at each room, seeing the boxes were empty and everything was organized. Yet the girl was nowhere to be found. I signed and turned off the lights upstairs, and after grabbing my laptop from my bed with its charger. Once back downstairs, I sat on the couch, leaving the kitchen and living room lights on. I began to do some work for my job as I have slept all day. While recording, of course, like I talked about before. After a good couple of hours, I got up and walked over to the kitchen with the laptop in my hand. I placed it on the counter in the kitchen facing the living room. I made a quick snack before grabbing the laptop and returning to the living room, continuing my work a bit more, till I had been working almost all night long. I didn't feel tired, though, at all. Instead, I felt like I had a lot of energy in me and could go all day. I got up and walked into the kitchen to start a good pot of coffee. I returned to the living room, seeing my laptop was missing. I looked around and for it, cursing under my breath, as I couldn't figure out where it went. It couldn't have grown legs and ran off, yet that's exactly what it did, as I found it was on my bed in my bedroom, with my bedroom door wide open with the charger just next to it. At the moment, I knew something was off because this was not explainable. I went over to it and picked it up. When I was halfway from the door in my bed, the lights turned off and my bedroom door closed. I was in the darkness. I couldn't see anything. I turned around and my eyes tried to adjust to the darkness. I went to my computer that was producing some light and picked it up and tried to use it as an oversized flashlight. But the screen was on the dim setting, so it only went a foot out in front of me. I went towards the wall and made my way to the door and was about to flip the light when for a split second I saw a tail of some kind going out of the light of my screen. I paused in place and slowly lifted my laptop to the ceiling, seeing one of the creatures was paranormal activity on my ceiling, crab walking on it. It was terrifying. I quickly noticed its eyes was black, pitch black. I tried to nope out of there, but it tackled me to the ground. It tried to wrap its tail around my neck as I felt the claws digging deep into my chest. I bit its tail with all my might, and it screamed. As I was grabbed by my shirt and lifted off the ground, I could feel its hot breath on my face, like it was about to chomp down onto my face. I gave it a good right swing from my right hand, hitting it right in what I think was the eye. It threw me across the room into the bathroom doors before jumping out of the window of my bedroom. which was the second floor. I groaned in pain as I slowly got up off my broken bathroom door. I looked around, hearing scratching noises above my head. I quickly turned on the bathroom light, yet saw nothing in my bedroom. This was when I heard the closet door open and saw Jessica's eyes. Her blue, glowing eyes coming from a crack that formed in my closet's door. I stared at the blue eyes as it stared back at me, but I stopped when the closet door closed. I slowly made my way to the bedroom light and flipped it on. With the remaining courage, I inched to the closet and quickly opened the door as well as turned on the light. I saw nothing was inside and sighed with relief. I walked over to my bed, sitting on it with adrenaline still pumping. My back ached, but my mind turned to the howling wind from my broken window. That was when I noticed black sludge was on the shards of glass, meaning the thing had got cut when it launched itself through my window. I knew I needed to do something about this, as instead of there were two of them. One just tried to kill me. All I know about them at the time was they were almost identical, except one had blue eyes and the other had black, which, for me to tell them apart, I had to get close enough to be able to see their eyes. And that was very unfortunate, as they was certainly more stronger than me, and getting close was not a very good idea. That is when I remembered my laptop was recording my webcam and screen, meaning it could have caught what attacked me. I looked around in my room and found my laptop was smashed into pieces, possibly by me throwing it when I was tackled to the ground. So I went to grab my phone and text my boss to send me the video, just the last bits of it from my work log. With the message sent, it was time to figure out what those things were. Before I could go into the walls of my new home, I first needed to do a few things. First, I needed to take care of my bleeding chest, which had 2 sets of claw puncture marks in my chest. Luckily, they were not serious. A cloth bandage covered them and stopped the bleeding. Next, I looked through the house for weapons that could be used in tight spaces. I couldn't fit much, but a small knife from the kitchen and an old taser the old owner had left. After that, I needed to find an entryway that could hold my size. With a small amount of looking, I found a hidden tile in my closet that leads to the crawl space underneath my closet floor. That was just big enough for me to fit in. The last step was to wait for morning. This was important, as I had noticed they were active during night instead of if they were asleep or something during the day. With the first light of the sun shining through my broken window, I knew it was time. I, with a taser, knife, and a flashlight, went feet first into the crawl space. The first thing I noticed that there wasn't much of anything, meaning there was no spider webs or signs of hidden compartments untouched for a while. This meant those things had been pretty active in my walls. Another thing I noticed was claw marks traveling from a small compartment to my left. It was a tight squeeze, but I managed to fit through. Now, most people would have just moved and said, fuck that. I never would have entered a crawl space. I agree with them, and it was a terrible idea. Furthermore, it was terrifying. What kept me going was to find the one black-eyed creature that tried to kill me, and kill it, as I just felt like Jessica was in danger or something, and I had to rescue her. Anyways, while entering the smaller crawl space, I began to hear heavy breathing. I slowed my pace and continued till it opened up, I assumed, to the attic. The floor was made of sections of insulation with 2x4s breaking them into parts, but further in near the middle of what was one of those things sleeping. I readied myself as I grew closer and watched my step very closely as I took deep breaths and took my time. Once standing over the creature, I drew my knife and prepared to attack. But first, I needed to see which one it was. I started to lean down towards its face as it was sleeping in a fetal position, but I was about to open its eyelids when the girl yelled, "No!" I snapped around to see she was in the attic with me. The girl that was in the dress. How did she get here? The sign of her ran so many questions through my mind, but I was given no time to ask them or answer them, as I felt a massive hit in the back, throwing me into the attic ceiling, then back down onto the 2x4s. I lifted my flashlight to see the black-eyed one was now awake and rushing me. I shined the light into its eyes and reached for my taser, but it was missing from my pocket. Before I could go for the small knife, it was on top of me. It was trying to claw out my face as I blocked using my arms. But doing so, my arms were getting cut open like a bad game of surgeon. Suddenly, the black-eyed was thrown off of me. I quickly turned to see that Jessica had saved me. Furthermore, I saw the girl was gone, meaning the girl that visited me all those days was Jessica. I may have guessed them long ago, but it took me till now to figure it out. I also now knew that she drugged my food when she made it. That's possibly why I passed out and remained asleep till night. Back to the story. Once the black-eyed thing was off me, I grabbed the flashlight and looked around for any weapon, but I couldn't find anything. Suddenly, the black eye was mid-air in front of me, claws drawn, and again tackled me, but I watched in slow motion as Jessica jumped over me and came crashing down on top of the black eye, knocking it off of me. I fell backwards and my hand went through the insulation and touched the drywall underneath. This gave me an idea to cut off my hand because of the pain of the shards of fiberglass embedded in my hand. Another idea was to break the weak floors to my advantage. Something told me that they were weak to the sunlight, but I couldn't see. So I got my feet and saw the two were fighting it out. I slammed my foot through the floor, making a gaping hole into the floorboard below me. Light shined through the foot-sized hole. I quickly started to do this all around me. Within seconds, I had plenty of light going through my ceiling. The black-eyed hissed in pain as Jessica quickly backed off of it, not seeming to feel the same effects as it did. I then saw my small knife in the insulation and grabbed it and saw my opportunity. I quickly dashed for the creature, stabbing it into the chest, but it lost its footing and we both came crashing down into my kitchen below. I landed safely on the hard floor as the black-eyed creature landed on the top of the countertop with a loud thump of its head. I didn't waste no time and grabbed the knife that was still embedded in its chest and stabbed the black eye again into its chest, hopefully inside its heart, or at least where it should have been. Luckily for me, I hit my mark, and the black-eyed creature gasped as it clawed at the air. I quickly backed up as it let out a horrible screech, covered my ears till it went silent once more. I had killed it, and that was when I remembered the other creature was just above me. I quickly looked at the ceiling man-sized hole, and of course it was dark, too dark to see, but I knew it was about to tackle me to the ground. So I began to run and open the front door to see Jessica. She was there in front of me. I paused as my heart stopped for a moment. Many thoughts ran through my mind. Is this what it was going to be like before she killed me? Do I turn around and run? Do I tell her I mean no harm? Do I apologize for what I have done? Or do I thank her for helping me? Before I could ask any of these, she rushed and hugged me, burying her face into my chest as she cried and cried. My shirt was soaked in a big circle in the place that she had pressed her head into. I won't lie, I was kinda hoping she would kill me now, as I honestly was horrible at making people feel good. I'm not a big teddy bear to cry on or tell people that it would be okay and make them feel better or stop crying. At least she was in human form. By the way, Jessica was the girl I was holding with one arm around her as she was crying into my chest. I backed up and closed the door, and I would like to say everything went to normal after that, but this would be far from the truth. At least we set some boundaries between each other to fill in the gaps. That thing that I killed was her lover, the previous owner. I buried the body in the woods nearby, and now I am giving my life to Jessica. The video that my boss saw of the thing attacking me on the recording of my laptop, well, the government got a hold of it, and they paid me handsomely for the location of the body. Hell, I was glad to get the thing further away from me. They did ask if there was any more of the things. I did lie and tell them that there wasn't, and that was the only one. I know they will come back after I post this. This brings me to why I am telling all you this. Well, I'm almost no longer a human. I don't know how, but I'm transferring into Jessica, or at least her kind, or possibly what the previous owner turned into. Not much longer, and this home will appear empty again as I go into the darkness forever. The sun burns now, too much to be able to stand in it. This will be my final words. I guess all I have to say is if you find a home that seems to be too good to be true, well, you best keep looking. You may find something living in your walls, watching you sleep and listening to you through the crack in the walls. Don't go in the crawl face looking for it. Just leave. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Jessica that lives in my walls. Now, I did create this story, and I did narrate it, as you can tell, so I guess all credit goes to me. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to let me know if I should do more narrating of my stories that I create. I have multiple, and some are much shorter than this, and I hope I did a good job of narrating such a story. So, I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.